Okay, good morning. We're very glad that all of you could join us this morning for our presentation. We are representing the Enterprise Project, and this morning we're starting our first of our Finance Core Concept sessions, this one being a focus on financial work tags. I am Eileen Lehman. I'm the Finance Change Manager for the Enterprise Project. And with me here today is Tiffany Mayers. Tiffany, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tiffany Mayers, and I am the Financial Foundation Data Model Lead.
And with us, actually, we have a substitute this morning. We will be joined later by Nisa Stricker, who is the Business Process Manager on our project as well for finance. Just a few notes before we get started with Tiffany's presentation. This session is one-way audio only, which means that we can only hear you if you use the chat feature. So we have a small box there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you use that to type any questions anytime, we'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation and stopping on a couple of occasions to take those questions. This session is being recorded and it will be made available for viewing on the Enterprise Project website later this week. Our intent today is to cover the basic concepts of Workday Financials. This is not intended to be training. There will be training closer to the time of go live next year, but this is instead a view of what kinds of concepts you'll need to apply to training when that time comes. We have a whole series, and we'll talk about that later, of this one being the core financial foundation, absolutely, foundation for all the other concepts. And with that, I think we are ready to start talking about financial work tags.
Great, thanks, Eileen. So as Eileen mentioned, we're going to focus on financial work tags for this core concept series. Hopefully most of you got a chance to attend the Workday 101 session, which really covered the basics of navigational topics, and you are able to go back and listen to that recording if needed. So today we're going to focus on financial work tags, and as you can see, there's another set of core concept sessions that are going to take place into the fall. So when I introduced myself, I specifically said the Financial Foundation Data Model Lead, and that's because in Workday, the Foundation Data Model really has components from HR, student, and finance. So in HR, we have supervisory organizations. In finance, we have the financial work tags. And then in student, we have the academic units. At the end of the presentation, I'll go a little bit more in detail of each of these. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to focus on what are work tags and why we use them, the different types of work tags, so what our FDM structure really looks like, what creates balance sheets and income statements, the required work tags on all transactions, what hierarchies are, the data integrity functionality that exists along with the governance structure, and then the translation tool that's going to be available. So what is a work tag? Let's pretend that we are an employee and we're working at a park. So maybe we're at the daycare center and we're responsible for activities that happen in this park. I have the ability to tag, we're going to tag this picture with multiple work tags. So first we're going to tag it with the park. So we can say this is location. Maybe I'm responsible for the plants that are in this park. So maybe I have expenses related to that and I can tag the plants. I'm also responsible for the animals, so I can tag those. And then maybe I'm responsible for the recreational equipment and I have expenses related to those and I want to keep track. Using work tags really allow us to get the reporting that we need at a later date. They're truly just objects or segments that we tie to a transaction. Why do we use work tags in finance? We want better reporting, so we can tag more data on transactions. This allows us to do earlier analysis and really provides better decision making. If we have more information and we get the information faster, that leads us to better decisions. So the foundation data model for finance truly is a multi-dimensional structure comprised of work tags. What you see here are the work tags that we are using to replace what we know as the chart of accounts today. I will mention these are not all the finance work tags, so each business process will have their own work tags. And then not all companies will be using all of these work tags. It will vary by company. So I will focus on what balancing and carry forward work tags are in a minute, but I want to just kind of give a brief definition of what each one of these are, because some of them probably look very familiar and some of them look new. One thing you might have noticed right away is there is no user-defined future state. What we've tried to do is replace how user-defined is used today with other work tags. So let's start with the first box. Company. Company is similar to company in Great Plains or business unit in PeopleSoft. So the Ohio State University, OSU Physicians, the health system. Balancing unit, this is something new. So balancing units used to capture non-cash assets and liabilities when we can't do that on other work tag values. Projects are used to track activities that have start and end dates. Fund is where we're going to probably see the largest change, specifically on the university side. We have over 25,000 funds today, and as of right now, we have only about 50 funds planned for PeopleSoft. And the reason we're able to get away from all of those funds is because the functionality of balancing work tags and carry forward work tags, which I'm going to talk about. Gifts and grants, we have these today, but they will have their own work tags in the future. So we will be able to pull those out of the funds and projects. Cost centers, so this is very similar to departments and orgs. Assignee, this came from the use of how user-defined is being used today. So when we need to track things by individual, so maybe I have a faculty member and they have startup, they have gifts, grants, we can tie assignees to those. Programs used to track activities that do not have start and end dates. Activities and events, this is another one that came from user-defined usage. This is really to track activities that are short-lived, usually reported on locally within the unit. Debt, this is new. We're pulling this information out of fund, but this will give us the ability to track our external debt. Loan work tag will be used to track internal debt. And then in our additional work tag column, I'm going to talk about ledger account, revenue category, and spend category together because this is a pretty significant change. Today we're used to ledger accounts and we don't have categories. Tomorrow our ledger accounts become a much higher level. They're at the level we need to create our financial statements. And the detail that we're used to getting from ledger account today, that really is going to come from our categories in the future. So we get our revenue detail from revenue categories, and we'll get our spend detail from spend categories from the expense side. And a good example of that is we could have a ledger account of supplies, but our spend categories tell us what type of supplies we're buying. Location, we have location today. Function actually exists today. You just don't see it. It's behind the scenes. It's required for NACUBO reporting. A change here is you are going to see function on transactions in the future. Area, this came from user-defined as well. So it has several purposes: to track different areas around campus, to track event, so groups of people. So maybe I'm throwing an event and I want to know whether that event was for students or faculty. In the health system, we're using it for nursing units. Work order, this also came from how we use user-defined. So this is going to allow us, if we have an external system and there is a ID we want to bring into Workday, we're going to be able to do that through work order. So if I think of administration and planning, and they have another system they use for job orders, they can bring that job order number over to Workday and follow it through on transactions. Academic term, this is used to track the term for student revenue. You might also see people using it for awards that they give out for the time period that they gave those out. We might also use it to determine when an event took place. The next two work tags are specific as of now to the health system. So financial class allows them to classify their revenue, so Medicare, Medicaid, etc. And then health system service lines will also be available for tracking. So now let's talk about what are balancing work tags. Balancing work tags really allow us to track balance sheet activity at any value within a work tag that is fully balancing. And this gives us the capability of producing a full balance sheet. So one example of a balancing work tag is company. So we would be able to produce a balance sheet at the university, the health system, health plan, OSUP, etc. Carry forward work tags allow us to roll forward equity into the next fiscal year. Some of you might know this as the GFSA carry forward that we have today in PeopleSoft. A change here is that this carry forward will happen on all fund types. So cost center is an example of one of the work tags that will have carry forward. So in Workday, what really can give us balance sheets, and where can we really track balance sheet activity? That's company, balancing unit, project, fund, gift, and grant. Workday is truly multi-dimensional, so not only can we pull a balance sheet at each one of these work tags, any value that sits within them, we can also do it at a combination of work tags. So I could pull balancing unit with fund and project and produce a balance sheet, or I could pull a balancing unit by itself. So now that we've talked about balance sheets, you're probably wondering what gives us an income statement. So in Workday, income statements will also be unique combinations of the following work tags. So basically any work tag that's replacing our chart of accounts is going to really give us an income statement. But just remember, not all of these track balance sheet activity. So we have company, cost center, fund, balancing unit, project, gift, grant, program, assignee, activities and events, and area. As you can see, we have lots of income statements out there that we can produce. So the same as balance sheets. I could pull one cost center and get an income statement, or I can pull a cost center in conjunction with a fund and a program or an assignee and get another income statement. So again, it's truly multi-dimensional. So there's a lot of work tags. So you can see that we're going to be able to tag a lot more information on transactions. But there are 4 specific work tags that are required on all financial transactions. These are our ledger accounts, balancing unit, company, and fund. And I'm sure many people are looking at this wondering, where is cost center? So cost center is not a full balancing work tag, so that's why it's not in this list, but cost center will be required on all non-balance sheet transactions. There will be a few exceptions when you do see a cost center attached to a balance sheet item, but it's not the norm. Also, that big change that I talked about categories. So we no longer will be selecting ledger account on transactions. The only transaction type that you can select ledger account on in the future is journal entries. So when doing operational transactions, the only thing that you'll be able to select is your revenue or spend category, and that revenue or spend category will drive it to the appropriate ledger account, and it will post it behind the scenes. So you won't even see ledger account on your main screen when you're entering a transaction. So that was a lot of different work tags and functionality that I covered, so I'm going to stop here to see if anyone has any questions.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. Just as a reminder, if you have a question, the chat box in the lower right-hand side of your screen is the appropriate place to post that. I don't have any questions right at the moment, so I think we can continue when you're ready.
Okay. So the next thing that Workday offers on these work tags is a lot of them have the capability for us to build hierarchies. And a hierarchy really allows us to roll up values to a higher level for reporting. It allows for different organizational roll-ups, and it also allows us to support security. So the example you see here, on the bottom, we have 3 cost centers, and we're able to roll those cost centers up to higher levels. And I will say this is just a snapshot of what a hierarchy is. The cost center hierarchy truly has 10 different levels. So we're able to take engineering, city and regional planning, and engineering landscape architecture and roll that together because that goes to the Knowlton School of Architecture. But maybe I'm in engineering and I want to pull engineering at the highest level. So I can roll all of their cost centers up to engineering. So when I'm pulling a report, I don't have to go in and select every single cost center to get it to pull in. I just pick engineering and it all comes together. I'm going to show you a little bit different hierarchy look, and this one's on spend category. So in the green, what you see are different types of chemicals. So we have chemical gases and chemical radioactive and chemicals explosive, and those all really roll up to chemicals and gases. And we can take that a step farther and go to supplies. So then you can see I also have cleaning supplies. And maybe it just rolls into itself, but it also really should be included in supplies. And you know how I talked about spend category really houses your detail? So in this example, this would truly be a university example here, that our category that we select might be chemicals and gases, but the ledger account that actually is going to post to is supplies. So, but you don't have to select supplies. The rule's already written. So you're probably wondering, this is a lot of work tags. How am I going to remember all of this? So Workday offers several types of functionality that makes data entry easier. It allows for data integrity. And it allows us really to write these rules that require certain work tags to be on transactions. So I'm going to demo this for you in just a minute. But related work tags really allow us to enter one value and bring other values along. So you don't have to enter every single work tag. Allowed values allows us to restrict what a user can select from a drop-down. And then again, custom validations allow us to write high-level rules. So maybe when I use a grant fund, an actual grant work tag has to be on the transaction. So now I'm going to go into the tenant and demo what a related work tag and allowed value may look like. Great, okay. So from Workday 101, this is our main home page. So you might remember what some of this stuff is. So we have our inbox here. We have applications for things that we use frequently that we can click on. And then we have our block O. So remember, anywhere you are in Workday, you'll be able to easily get back to this home page by clicking on the block O. So I'm going to create, not fully, but I'm going to pretend that I'm going to create a journal entry. And this is truly so I can just show you how the work tags are going to default. So I'm just going to fill in this base information that's required for me to start. So anyone that will be creating journal entries, don't worry, there will be training on how you do that later. Oh. I did this with the date yesterday. Let's see. So it looks like they don't have April 2019 open in this tenant. I am using an old tenant, so I apologize for that. So I'm not going to fill any of this in. Like I said, I'm not here to show you how to create a journal entry, but just really want to show you on a transaction when you're entering work tags what that's going to look like. So let's say on this journal entry, my main focus is grant. So I'm not going to fill this in from left to right, which is another big change, right? I'm going to focus on what is the main purpose of this transaction. So I'm going to enter a grant number. And when I hit enter, you may have noticed that a bunch of work tags automatically populated for me. So the cost center came in, the balancing unit, the function, and the fund. So that is what a related work tag is. It really allows us to enter one value and some other values will come in. So a loud value, let's say I take this balancing unit off and I want a different balancing unit. You can see in my drop-down list that I only have specific balancing units that I can select. So it's not all balancing units that are available in the system. So I can only select these arts and sciences values to put them in there. Now, while most cost centers will only have one balancing unit that's available, there will be a few instances where multiple balancing units are there. But allowed values really restricts what goes into that drop down. And then as I mentioned, custom validation, if there was a custom validation written specifically and says, hey, anytime you use a grant fund, you have to use a grant work tag, then it wouldn't allow you to post this transaction. So I'm going to stop there to see if there's any specific questions around hierarchies or the data integrity concepts of related work tags, allowed values, and custom validations.
Thanks, Tiffany. That was really helpful, being able to see the screens. I think that that made that really come alive for me. I know that. I don't see any questions right now. Just if you do have questions anytime during this presentation, feel free to type them in. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas or thoughts about how this may affect you and you'd like to have some clarity, we'd love to help you out. All right, let's go ahead.
So we will continue. So next we're going to talk about governance. And the real goal of this is to allow for work tags to evolutionize when we need, right? We know new values are going to be needed. We know we're going to need to be able to track new things. And we're going to have a process to help you through that to make sure we're setting up the right work tag. So there will be a form that you have to complete, very similar today when you make a request to add a new chart field value. It'll go through an approval process. And then the team's really going to assist in making sure that we're really setting up the right work tag based on definitions. So there could be instances when you ask for a program and based on working with you, we find out, oh, really probably should be a project. So we will help you get that project information that we need to create that. And the real goal here is to try to have some standardization, right? We all track similar things. We know in units there's a need to track, very unique things to that unit. And Workday really offers the capability for us to do that. And we do feel that the structure is so multi-dimensional that everyone will get what they need from a reporting perspective. So the other thing that you might be wondering is, how is my PeopleSoft and Great Plains data gonna get into Workday, and how am I gonna know how this information translates? So there will be a translation tool available, and it was actually built to support us with conversion, but we will be releasing it to all users. And this is going to allow you to type in a PeopleSoft or Great Plains value, and it's going to tell you what that value became in Workday. It's also going to give you the capability to translate a chart-filled string, because you could get a different result if you put multiple PeopleSoft and Great Plains segments together than if you're looking them up one by one. One thing to keep in mind is this translation tool is really only to tell you where your historical data went. It's not a true picture of necessarily the future, and it's not going to be continually updated once we go live. So it's really, how did we take your current legacy information and translate it to Workday? So I would like to demo the translation tool for you to show you what that will look like. So I do have administrator access in this tool, so I have much more stuff over here on the left-hand side than you will actually have. You would only see two things. You will see this browse. I think it just refreshed on me. And then you're going to see this translate. So I'm going to go through both of those for you. So in legacy segment, I can actually put in a legacy value. And you can fill these in if you wanted to say if it's PeopleSoft or Great Plains. And then if I was to select something, then you get the segments for each of those companies, or you can actually search for things by description. So if this is really an org, and I know that, so I'm just going to go down here. But if I was to say, hey, I know this is an org, you can see it's just going to pull up that one value. So here, if I click on it, we can tell that this org is now a cost center of nursing college administration, and it also turned into a balancing unit of nursing general. I can also go to Worktags, and I'm going to use that same one, and I'm going to enter the cost center ID, and that cost center is that nursing college administration. And if I click on this, you can see that nursing has collapsed multiple orgs into one cost center. So it will tell you what legacy data got mapped to that specific value. Now, if you were to go into the balancing unit, you might see many more orgs. So let's go to translate. So if I go here and say I want to translate a PeopleSoft chart-filled string, I can do that. So I'm going to enter some information here. So I have the business unit, I have an org, a fund, and an account. And when I hit enter, you can see all the work tags that this information is now connected to in Workday. One thing about the Translate tab, it really has rules written in the background. So there's precedence rules that say what values win over other values. So this gives you that true full translation. So if you were looking at your historical data and wanted to do a chart-filled string, the recommendation would be go through Translate and don't look up each individual value by itself because you could get a different result. So this translation tool will be very helpful in the transition while we're learning the new FDM structure. And we do hope that it's going to be released early next year so everyone will be able to get out there and get used to it before we go live. So I'm going to flip back to the presentation. So we covered several topics, right? This is truly the base of the foundation data model for finance. So as Eileen mentioned, this isn't a training. We don't expect you to remember all this. We're really in these core concept sessions setting the stage for that deeper training that you're going to get. You're going to see these work tags used over and over again as you see the business process training, and we want you to be familiar with what they are. So now, if you remember at the beginning, I said the foundation data model really includes more than just finance. So I'm going to talk about each one of those briefly. So I said HCM has the supervisory orgs, student has academic unit, and in finance, we have our financial work tags with our biggest structure being that cost center structure. And in our legacy system, specifically in PeopleSoft, we're used to these being one structure. But in Workday, we truly can have 3 different structures and be on one platform and be able to share information across, which is really important. So supervisory org is truly who reports to who. Who is my manager? Academic units, it really brings our departments together. So we would have the college has departments. Within those departments, there are courses that take place. So it's truly that whole academic unit structure. And then on the finance side, cost center, that's a large one, right? So if I gave you an example, we could have a person that reports to someone from a supervisory org perspective, and potentially their costing is coming from a different area. So that's when our finance structure is involved. And then if they are tied to an academic unit, they could even be tied to a separate academic unit. And these are things that you're really going to see throughout the concepts and additional training. Each of those areas will go more in depth like we did on the finance side. But this is where you can start taking notes. So the next session is going to be, core concept session is going to be on business processes. So go ahead and save the date for that. It's going to be on May 28th. And then we will have more core concept sessions that continue into fall. So that is the end of the presentation. So we would like to take any questions that you might have. As Eileen did mention, this session is being recorded and will be made available to you.
That's great. Wonderful job. Thank you, Tiffany. So we presented the same material in person yesterday and had a number of questions about how it applied to some of the situations. Some folks who, for example, we had one person who described a situation where she had one professor or some member of the department who was actually applying costs to multiples and was concerned about how that would play out in terms of what they could see when they were making transactions. Can you describe a little bit more about that question and how it would play out in Workday?
Yeah, so in this instance, this employee has specific funding and different funds that they can use. And the question was really, are we going to be able to restrict in Workday what that specific person can select? So the related work tag structure is really what work tags can be used in combination and what values from a default perspective, but it doesn't restrict what an employee can specifically select. So there will be custom validations in place to make sure we're not using health system values on the Unum company or vice versa, but there will be no restriction from an employee perspective by an individual basis. So what we would look at is when those transactions go through that approval process, if the wrong values were selected, we would expect those to be fixed at that point.
Great, thank you. I will just remind everyone that we do have in our chat box at the bottom right-hand corner is the field where you can enter your own questions. Another question that we got was about how does this look for reporting? I mean, we have people who are used to seeing certain reports certain ways, but now we have a whole lot of different information. How does this wide variety of work tags change what reporting looks like?
Yeah, so it definitely will change what our reporting looks like. While we'll be able to get the same information we have today, plus the reports are going to look very different. And I believe there's a reporting core concept session in August. I don't have the exact date.
Yes, yeah, August 27th.
Okay, August 27th, where you'll be able to see a preview of what that looks like. I can say right now we're going through a conversion process of all the fiscal year 18 data in PeopleSoft, and every unit, there is someone or a few people from every unit that's involved in tying out that data, which is going to start May 8th, where they're going to have a chance to make sure that the mappings are accurate that they've been helping us with, and then also giving feedback on those reports that they're going to be using.
Great, and I will just promote the fact that we will continue to provide those dates of the next sessions. With each of these sessions, both the links, all the links for these things will be on that enterpriseproject.osu.edu webpage, and all of the dates and availability will be promoted there too. So we also had a lot of questions yesterday about security and delegation that I think will really be more answered when we get closer to that session in September, which that one's September 24th. We did receive a question for those people who are not familiar. We're implementing a new tool for project management called eBuilder, and Linda asks whether eBuilder will interface with Workday. And Nisa Stricker is in the room with us. Nisa, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Hi, everybody. This is Nisa Stricker on the Enterprise Project on the finance team. And yes, I'd love to answer that question about eBuilder. So when we go live with Workday, eBuilder and Workday will integrate. The data will integrate between those two systems. Now, you may have heard, since you're familiar with eBuilder, that eBuilder is implementing prior to Workday. And so before Workday goes live, when we implement eBuilder early this summer, we clearly will not be able to integrate with Workday at that point. But yes, when we go live in July of 2020, the expectation is that the two systems will integrate.
Great, thank you, Nisa. I saw that John was typing a question, and he seems to have stopped typing his question, so I go for it, John. We'd love to hear from you. There it is. Does Buckeye Plan look a lot how Workday will? Does Buckeye Plan look at all like Workday? Is that what you're? If I'm not asking your question right, John, please let me know.
So I can try to answer that. I think that there are some similarities in that Buckeye Plan. And so from what I understand, and I'm not terribly familiar with it, but my understanding is that Buckeye Plan is a system that you would access via the web. So there are similarities there, and also has some strong reporting capabilities, which Workday is actually very well known for its reporting capabilities. John, if you have more information, does that answer your question, or is there another question there that I'm not answering?
And while we wait on that, we also have another question coming in. So I'll continue to encourage you. We have plenty of time here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or collect them as we get answers if we don't have them for you today. Wait for just a moment here. Some of the questions that we got yesterday about security and delegation, I'm thinking about the exercise you were just describing, Nisa, of having those folks that are checking through the data and thinking about what tags some people can see and others cannot. I wondered if there's a way to help people understand how that affects reporting and to some degree planning, that there's a connection here, that the tags and how they're connected is not by people but by organizations. That came up yesterday, and I think that kind of gets at the core of what people will see and what people can interact to. I see you nodding, Tiffany. I'm hoping you can pick that up.
I mean, from a work tag perspective, so it really comes down from a company area on what work tags each of those companies are using. I will say Univ is using most of those work tags, so all of them but two that I mentioned. But when you get into maybe the health system or OSUP or the health plan, they're going to be using less work tags that we see from a Univ side, but all the work tags will be available from a planning perspective. Financial accounting has decided which work tags will be available from a budget perspective and has been working with the financial planning and analysis team on that. So they're like Workday is really multi-dimensional, and we can allow for budget where we need to. So there's going to be a lot more flexibility from a budget or planning stage in the future on what's capable, and that information will go into Buckeye Plan or whatever our planning solution is at that time.
But it'll be based, so if I'm a user, it'll be based on what organizations I'm tied to, what funds I'm working in, that I will be interacting with, not based on just like an individual in
Correct.
roles. Okay, so we have a couple more questions. And John, if you had any other follow-up, please let us know. But Mary asks, in regard to related work tags, how will cost share reporting work since the work stream will not be standard?
I think we might have to parking lot that and maybe I'm not sure about what, can you give us any more information what you mean when you said it will not be standard?
And go ahead, Mary, and you can fill in some more. And while we're doing that, we can come back and revisit that question here as she goes into more detail. We also have another question. Are there any job aids available to view currently or soon? And thank you for that question, because that helps us explain a little bit more about how you'll learn how to do all of this. So we have a whole procession of things that are happening between now and next spring. And this being the first of these conceptual presentations, we're not getting into the details of job aids until we get to a system that we're actually testing, which we're building the system now. It will be tested in the fall. At that point, we'll have job aids that the testers are using and will be developing to make sure that they're accurate and they're appropriate. And then as we start to bring in users in the spring, both for testing purposes and then training, those job aids will start to become available. So depending on what your role is in this progression, you may see things sooner than others, but we won't be actually releasing those kinds of materials until next spring, just from the perspective that there's a lot of development and testing that has to happen before we get there. And we want this to be just in time for when you'll actually use them too. I see that Mary is still working on hers, so I'll take the next question as well. Will IDBs, OBAs, and budget transfers all fall under journals? And this one, I am looking at these letters and I am too new to this to know what these stand for, so I'm hoping you guys do.
Yeah, so they do have a lot of transfer, our transfer accounts and our categories associated with them. So that is a financial accounting topic. So we can parking lot that, but there are set transfer categories along with set definitions of what those should be used for.
But we'll get that question answered, and when we send it back out or in my next message that I send out, I can be sure to answer that as well.
Yep, Desiree, I will make note of your name so that we can be sure to follow up with you.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, this is Stump Your Presenters. Go right ahead. So Mary, going back to Mary's question, so I enter cost share currently with my org, fund, account, etc., and then I add an OSP project number. If entering the project brings up the related work tags, will I be able to enter the full string without it pulling related work tags for the project?
Yes, you can do that. So although related work tags are pulled, you can still override those. And that was just an example of something that was in the system so we could show you the full functionality. So it doesn't mean every single one's going to have a related work tag on it. We're truly trying to put those related work tags on things that really shouldn't change that frequently, but you do have the capability to override anything that automatically defaults.
Great. Does anyone else have a question for us? All right. Well, this has been great. Really appreciate having all of you involved and participating this morning. We would encourage you, if you're not already subscribed to the Enterprise Project Digest, this is a great publication that tells you all about what's going on. You can learn about new sessions. You can, as we start to release schedules for training and those kinds of things. All this is our go-to source, so please make sure that you subscribe to it if you're not already. And you can contact us at enterprise-project@osu.edu with any further questions that you have. Kevin, thanks for your compliment. Great presentation. Thank you. I agree. Thank you, Tiffany, for your great work this morning, and Nisa for your help with our questions. And we'd like to thank again all of you for participating this morning. Please let us know how we can help. Have a great day.